What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Josh here, aka Joshmas Prime for Polymathics, the YouTube channel that helps you become a modern day Renaissance man. And in this video, we're actually going to talk about one of my favorite video game franchises of all time, Mortal Kombat. For those of you that don't know, just recently, NetherRealm Studios released the Mortal Kombat 11 trailer, which has me super psyched. I'm getting all sweaty nerd about this. But for those of you who listen to the channel and you're like, wait a minute, how does this have anything to do with becoming a modern day Renaissance man, reaching my fullest potential, all the things that you talk about? I promise if you hang in there with me, I'm going to make the connection. And I think it's actually a very valuable connection. And here we have the trailer playing right now. So as you guys know, one of the key things that I talk about, one of the main staples of this channel is storytelling, because I'm not only a writer of science fiction and fantasy, but also an owner and co-founder of a small publishing press. So, of course, this type of thing is important to me. And the reason is because Mortal Kombat and this franchise has stood the test of time. It's lasted for decades. It's dominated the competition with a capital K for years because of its ability to continue to raise the bar on what it means to be a fighting game. And many of you might be asking yourselves, like, okay, so how does this relate to anything that happens in my everyday life? Well, here's the deal. One, outside of the action and the blood and gore, which we're seeing in this trailer, these characters were based on mythological archetypes. For example, in this clip, in the trailer, we see Raiden and Scorpion fighting. Right now, Scorpion's using his fire ability because Scorpion represents the fire elemental. A little earlier, and as you'll see because the clip plays over and over again, Raiden uses electricity. He uses lightning because he is the lightning god. And how many lightning gods have we seen in mythology? I mean, two that everybody's familiar with, aside from, the Chinese god, is Thor, god of thunder, and Zeus from Greek mythology. And if you look through the pantheon of heroes or characters in this franchise, what you'll see is that many of them are based on gods and demigods from various cultures and religions, which is why, despite the surface level of gameplay and gore like we're seeing here and action, that's really what hits people on a subconscious level and makes them connect to these characters so well. And one of the other things that this franchise has done really well, Ed Boon and the other creators of NetherRealm Studios have really focused in on the storytelling in the last few installments, and really beefed it up so that now the storytelling is on par with the gameplay and the fighting. And that's what's really making this franchise come back to life. I mean, of course, there's better graphics and they kind of went back to the nostalgic look of the 2D display, but beyond that is that they're creating a very strong foundation with the storytelling element, because that's the part that connects with the audience and gets them invested in all of these characters because they want to get invested in the story. And so Really quick before I start to geek out on this, how does this apply to your normal everyday life? Well, if you're any kind of fiction writer, then the translation is obvious. Find characters that are based on mythological archetypes and then mold your characters after them, okay? Raiden and Scorpion are a good example. Again, you have the fire elemental, the lightning elemental, but if you consider Sub-Zero, he is the water elemental. We see these things here. Who's that character? Probably a new end boss. Looks like they're a diamond elemental or something, and although they're bald looking, they looked like they were some sort of like female elfish creature, probably an elder god. But you wanna base your characters off of some sort of archetypal figure. That way your audience can catch them right away. Now another thing about this is, don't just get caught up in the superficial how the character looks, but it's more about how they act, what they do, what functions they play. Of course, in a fighting game, the main things that people are going to relate with is how they look and how they fight, their fighting styles. So that's how these characters were developed. But if you look at the storyline, and even if you go back to the original, Raiden serves as the mentor. He helps guide Liu Kang, who serves as the kingly hero because his bloodline comes from Kung Lao, who defeated the emperor years ago in Mortal Kombat. He's the kingly hero. You have Raiden, who's the mentor. You have Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade, who are the everyday heroes, both a male and female version of everyday people who are just going through life, who got caught up in this tournament that decides the fate of the realms. So again, very interesting how this plays out. So even from the beginning, the storyline, this is how these things were formed, and the archetypes were involved. However, over the years, the story's gotten much more narratively deep, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Like, there's depth in the narrative now that it did not have before. I wish there was a little bit more depth in the dialogue, but all things considered, NetherRealm Studios has done a great job of continuing to grow, which is another thing that all of us in our own personal lives and also in business and if you're an entrepreneur or something, that's another thing. Like, just because you're dominating doesn't mean that there isn't potential to grow and change and develop. And that's what they did. They went from just a game that had a basic storyline and some really kick-ass characters and gameplay to developing a very in-depth pantheon and mythology around these characters. And I really think that's where they did right, and where Street Fighter and so many other things, like I think it was Basic Instinct, like they went wrong. They didn't dive deep enough into the archetypes and the mythology and create a depth in the narrative. And then, again, in your own personal life, this is another thing, whether you're trying to sell yourself in a job interview, whether you're trying to go out on a date and sell yourself to another individual who you want to have a relationship with, you also want to feed on these archetypes because they're going to help you instantly relate and connect with a person, because if you do it intentionally, they'll know who you're coming from. I'll give you an example. I'm an author, and I write, and I give advice on writing, and I give tools on writing, and I write, science fiction and fantasy. So, of course, I'm going to take on the mentor archetype in a lot of the costumes and outward displays that I use. And because that's pretty much the role that I fulfill in everyday life and in my business. So this is why I have a beard. This is why I wear sports coats and blazers, because that's kind of what's expected for someone who does all the things that I do. That's the mentor archetype. Not just from the outward appearance, which of course would be the costume that the superhero wears for their audience, but additionally, the role that you play, that's the most important. Once you identify your role in a relationship, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, then you can cultivate, like, what are the actions that I need to take in order to fulfill my role. If in business you're the mentor role, that means you're helping other people in their journey. You're not a coach, you're not a teacher. There's a difference, right? A coach is on the sidelines calling the plays. A teacher is giving information but not actually out there with the heroes doing anything. A mentor is someone who provides tools and tips and a mindset that's going to get the person to achieve their task through their journey, but they're also there with them on their journey. They're like an older, seasoned hero who's out there in the playing field as well, doing the work. So that's just one example of many. Most of us are the hero of our own story, and we go on several journeys throughout our life, whether it's parenthood, whether it's joining the military, getting a new job. There's several different things that happen in our own lives where we take on the hero aspect. So that's another thing to consider. These are all ways that they apply to your own life. And again, anybody who runs a business or maybe even works for a company, you could take, who is this character? If I could just pause here, like, who is this character? They have this, they don't have any hair, but they have a female body. It's like an androgynous figure. I really think this is some sort of elder god, probably going to be the final boss. That's just my prediction. But to go back to the conversation, we can all take a tip from NetherRealm Studios in terms of how to run a business, which is no matter how much success you've had, you have to continually stay on the foreground of what's new and innovative in the field that you work in. And that requires you to continue to develop. For example, here's Shao Kahn. That's another, that's going to be awesome. Like, they're providing beta access. You're going to get to play as Shao Kahn. I mean, that's just super cool. But you have to stay on top of things. You can't just rest on your laurels. And so again, NetherRealm Studios has done such a great job. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to, like right now we see Raiden, he's got this like orange type of electric, which I think at the end, if I recall the end of Mortal Kombat 10, if you played him and you won, or maybe that was part of the storyline, it's been a while since I played, like it was almost like it was evil Raiden or something. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But that's another thing. They killed off Liu Kang for a while. They're allowing Raiden to go a little evilish. Like, there's a lot of things going on here which are super cool because they're not resting on their laurels. They're not attached to any one character staying the same. They're allowing the characters to fully develop. These are all things, all little tiny lessons that we can take and apply to our own lives in our own everyday interactions, whether it's at work or with other people. The main thing is continue to innovate and don't rest on your laurels. That's how you can continue to have success despite many challenges that come your way. I mean, if you think about it, especially in their early years, NetherRealm Studios faced a lot of heat from the media and people who were super opposed to all of this blood and gore. But what they weren't seeing was that behind all of this action-packed fighting and stuff was basically a mythological story that was connecting with the audience. and with society at large. But so now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, I'm going to let my sweaty nerd kind of come out even more. But my hope is that NetherRealm Studios is going to use Injustice 2 as sort of the template for how the gameplay is going to work, where they incorporate upgrades and armor and superpower additions. For anybody who played Injustice, essentially what happened is as you battled, you could earn new armor upgrades and customize your armor and all this other stuff, which made the game super, super, like, it just added another layer to the game, because now you could create different loadouts for your character depending on who you were going to fight, or just depending on like how you wanted the character to look. So that was a super cool thing that they did, and I'm hoping that they bring it back to this as well. But aside from that, yeah, so they brought out the loadouts, the customization that made the game like way more fun to play. And I'm hoping that they incorporate this in here. I'm hoping that they bring back more characters. One of my favorites that I hope they bring back is Noob Saibot. I love that character. He's one of my all-time favorites. I love his fighting style and all that. So, and then aside from that, I'm hoping that the storyline, they continue to develop a very solid storyline. But what about you? What do you think? What characters would you like to see? What type of gameplay would you like to see? Who don't you want to see? Are there some of the new characters from the Mortal Kombat 10 that you don't want to see come back? Who are they? Go ahead and drop a comment down below and let's discuss. But until next time, if you haven't already, go ahead and give this a like if you liked it. And if you want to see more content like this and continue this conversation, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And like I said before, if you have a comment or you think I missed something, go ahead and drop it down in the comment section, and let's continue this conversation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Josh Coker, aka Joshmas Prime, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.